Welcome back everybody to this series on the endgame maze and converting an endgame advantage. This will be a multi-purpose series. I want to teach you all the good things about the endgame. We'll talk about the endgame principles, but also importantly, I will show you the technique, the winning technique, how to convert an advantage in chess. We will work on plan making in the endgame. We'll formulate plans and then I will execute it against the bots and the engines on chess.com. It can be big personalities like Gotham Chess or Nakamura or their highest engine available on chess.com. I will test my conversion skills while explaining the plans to you. And again, give me feedback. Maybe you can send me some interesting endgame positions that I can discuss in this video, and I can also give a shout out to you, and we'll do it together. I'm awaiting your feedback. This will be a combination of instruction and practical training positions. As I said, this is also nice. I will revisit material from the previous episodes, so we'll form connections. I'm a cognitive scientist, so I actually want to structure the series to make them learning very efficient also. So lots of spaced repetition, revisits of the very important concepts in the endgame that you must know. But we'll be doing this in a strategic level, right? We'll be discussing plans, endgame strategy, and how do you convert? How do you verbalize a plan and how to convert? This episode, I want to focus more on the passed pawn, right? Because in the last episodes, we looked at the king's activity, which is one of the most important factors in the endgame, as you know. And second very important point is the passed pawn, right? Generation of a passed pawn is one of the most typical winning plans in the endgame. And obviously the value of a passed pawn grows as the game reaches an endgame. Endgame has a different sets of rules compared to the middle game. Because endgame is usually, simplified. The king no longer faces mating threat usually, so the king has to move up. Passed pawns are becoming important because they can become queens, and also orienting yourself towards long-term weaknesses becomes important. Check this position, folks. It's a game of Karpov. How do you formulate a winning plan for white? That's my question to you. White pieces are obviously dominating. Just look at your pieces. Beautiful locations. This bishop on a8 is a buried piece. That's a terrible piece on a8 actually. The king is restricted. Black cannot move a single pawn on the queen side. It's almost like a Zugzwang, don't you think? But black will wait. So black will keep on waiting. Bishop b7, bishop a8. So you have to formulate, right, a winning plan from here. So how do you convert this advantage? That's my question. And obviously after spending some time, hopefully you understood the gist here. The gist is white somehow has to create the second front or the second problem for black, and that idea can actually come on the king's side. Can you look at this pawn on h5 and formulate a good plan for white, which was pawned by Karpov? Yes, folks, Karpov goes for f3 plus g4 plan, because if he does that, inevitably either he will win a pawn for nothing or he will actually have a chance to create a passed pawn with h5. Isn't it beautiful? That's a beautiful idea. And after takes, well, black can no longer prevent h5, which means this pawn is becoming a passed pawn that will bury or that will tie down the black king, and this will give ground to our king. You see how beautiful this is? I can put it into words to you. I can verbalize the plan to you. So this is the simplest winning plan, and in fact, the game just ended after king f6, because there is no way for black to now stop this h5, h6, and then the white king will collect all the pawns. The bishop is still buried on b7, terrible obviously, and white wins. You can also call this the creation of a second front, right? Like black already has one big set of problems in this position, but white needs to create a second front, second problem for black, second weakness to win the game, and the second weakness comes as a result of f3 g4. Remember, in the strategic deep dive series, I told you about the weaknesses in a position and how to create a weakness in the position, and that's exactly what this move also does, right? Like creating a second problem for black in terms of a passed pawn is a very common theme also in the endgame. And obviously after f takes g4, if black does go bishop a8, then yes, h5 was the plan, right? Takes, and this pawn is rolling. The king has to get tied down, and it will be basically just a very similar result, right? He has to wait like this. Well, he cannot even go here because it's 7. And if he does wait like this with bishop b7, I can push the pawn, and then I can take all your pawns, and the game is over, right? Simple chess. Notice that the pass pawn creation was the key. And remember, pass pawn is, together with king's activity, is one of the most important concepts in the endgame phase. Let's try an endgame position. Let's try to convert this against Hikaru Nakamura on chess.com. He's a very strong player, and we are playing against the bot, HikaruBot, this time. He should offer some resistance, but obviously white is better in this position, so I will try to convert it, and I will explain my thoughts to you. So that's the goal of this series, that we are doing it together to make it as fun and educative as possible. And I will start thinking out loud in this position and tell you why white is better. First of all, it's we have a beautiful pass pawn on h6. Pass pawns, remember, it's always a good thing. Outside pass pawn is an extra advantage in the endgame. I will tell you why at a later stage. Well, you can understand, right? Because this outside pass pawn is tying down the black pieces. They have to be decoyed on that side. Well, we have a bishop versus knight. Pawns on both sides. That's a good thing for the bishop. But how do you convert your advantage in this position? That's my question, right? Let's say that this is the first weakness for black, but can you create the second weakness or the second front? What are you seeing, folks? Connected to the previous or today's episode, right? We were discussing about pass pawns and the creation of a pass pawn, right? It's a typical endgame winning technique. So once your goal becomes creation of a pass pawn, I assume you will see this beautiful idea, right? b3, a4. I want to create the second pass pawn, push it, and then black army will be disorganized, right? Because it's just too many pawns to fight against. So this is my winning plan, and I will try to execute it against Nakamura. Obviously, if I go b4, b3, I need to see what I'm doing against b4, and I'm seeing this bishop c5 move, right? A very short calculation that justifies that black cannot go b4 and freeze my pawns on the queen side. Correct? So this is my short calculation. b3, b4, bishop c5. White is winning. So b3 must be a good move. Okay. Hikaru, he's a strong player. He goes king f5. Active defense. I will just follow my plan. Takes. Knight f6. Okay, so he wants to create some sort of immediate counterplay. In relation, maybe he wants to go knight g4 followed by takes. The question is obviously, does he have time for all this? And obviously as white, what is the first line that we must calculate here, folks? I think the first line, very logical line we must calculate is, what if I don't care and just push my pawn all the way to the promotion score, right? So for example, a5, fine, go, knight g4, king somewhere, take on h6, a6. Can that knight stop my pawn? Because as far as I could see, the king can no longer stop our pawn on a6, right? Imagine that our pawn lands on a6, the king cannot enter this promotion square. So this knight on h6 must find a way to stop the pawn on a6. Is it possible? Is it possible? This is my question. This needs some calculation, and this is also why endgames are so tough, because it's also very concrete. You need to calculate a very specific line. Okay, so this is my calculation. Please bear with me. a5, knight g4 check. Let's say king f3. Let's say king f3. Take on h6. a6. a6. I'm looking at moves like knight f7 first. Knight f7. Because maybe he wants to, let's say, go back and defend against the pawn like this. Knight f7. I'm seeing, for example, moves like bishop c5. I'm stopping knight d6 at that moment. Right? Knight d8, for example. But then comes a7. And the knight cannot defend the pawn. Can you see my calculations, folks? Because this is an extremely concrete situation. And I don't want to, let's say, defend this pawn passively. Well, there's even no way to really, defend anymore, I guess. Because there's no way for me to... Let's say I can go king f3 in this position. Maybe you can argue for king f3. It's also a logical move, actually. It's also a logical move. Because if I go king f3, right, after knight g4, I'm pushing the pawn. The pawn promotes. Right? Or at least the knight has to be tied down again. I mean, knight d5 check followed by knight g6, but I'm happy, right? Because the knight has to get tied down on that pawn. But obviously, if I go king f3, he can also maybe make moves like king g6 and win the pawn like that. Although, again, the king is actually losing ground, and this gives me a chance to push the pawn. Okay, so in a practical game, folks, if I have enough time, I would definitely calculate this line first because that's the most ambitious, that's the most forcing, and that's totally in relation to my goals. But obviously I would be aware that I have an interesting candidate of king f3 in this position, right? Just stopping his king and limiting his choices. And also like stopping knight g4 check followed by takes on h6. Interesting position, right? Very interesting position here on the board actually. You know what? I will trust my instincts and I will push a5 against Hikaru. Wow, I didn't even see this move actually as a candidate because to my mind, knight e4, it's not so clear what this move does, right? What exactly is the point? For example, if I do go king g2 in this position, for example, if I do go king g2, what will be his next move? Okay, he wants to win the pawn like that, but is he in the right? I mean, can the knight stop the pawn? That's my question, folks. Can the knight stop that pawn? a6, knight e6, bishop c5. Right? What am I missing? Okay, that will cost him a full knight, that pawn, as far as I could see right now. But he wants to actually, yeah, he wants to actually go here and sacrifice the knight for the pawn. I see that. I see that. But what if I make this move, bishop b8, and I actually want to also maybe take that pawn, also, you know, threaten his promotion. I think bishop b8 is a very strong move right now, folks. Don't you think? I'll put on the board. Yes. My initial goal is to take on f4. And because that pawn, you know, no one can stop that pawn anyways. My bishop can always go back and guard, at least, you know, support the pawn promotion. So my candidate becomes bishop f4 in this position. Okay, so we are happy because we actually managed to save our pawn as well on h6, right? And Hikaru's pieces are sort of tied down against both of our pass pawns, right? That's a beautiful thing. We have two outside pass pawns which are paralyzing the black pieces. So now what could be the winning plan here for us? You tell me, folks. Obviously, we have this, you know, normal looking move bishop b8 followed by a7 that will cost him a knight. I see that. But then also, you know, you need to be aware of this endgame. You need to make sure that you're winning there. Right? Well, extra bishop, sure, we should be winning that position actually. We can go back to it. But is there even a simpler technique for us? That's my question, right? Like, for example, why don't we activate our king first and take it from there? You know, like moves like king f3, for example, and king e3. Because our king definitely belongs to the center of the board, no? Okay. Okay, knight d4 check, but my goal was even to maybe allow this, right? Yeah, the knight is sort of tied down. The knight could never take on c2 because I was pushing my pawn to a7. You know, this Hikaru guy is a tricky guy, don't you think? A tricky player. How do we win this position, folks? You tell me. Bishop b8 is still an idea because if you take my bishop, then comes a7, promotion. I assume there are many winning plans for us in this position. I'm just thinking what is the best. Like you can, for example, drop the bishop somewhere here and maybe move the king up like this slowly on that side of the board. There are also, of course, moves like bishop d6 in this position. I mean, there are even moves like this, by the way. h7 followed by king invasion. My king wants to invade over here and take your knight, right? We are spoiled for choice in this case. Well, Naka, you're a great player. You offer resistance here against me. A mere immortal candidate master. Right. So, again, in a practical game, I have to make a decision here, folks. And winning positions, you need to be careful. That's why I'm taking my time here because I'm very close to victory. I sense it. I'm very close to victory. So I don't want to spoil it. So if you also have lots of time in your clock, hopefully you have in your practical games, it's a perfect moment right now to stop and really formulate a winning plan. You know, the clear winning plan in this position. My first hunch is this, the most forcing, right? Let's check this line first. Because I simply want to just promote my pawn, right? Fine, you can take here. I go a7, you need to sacrifice your knight. And then as far as I could see, right? There is no way for black to forcefully exchange the last pair of pawns. And my king will go here and we collect all the pawns. Are you with me, folks? Can you see my plan? My plan is to sacrifice h6, but I will forcefully win that knight. And then after bishop a7, I'm hitting that pawn. So probably he has to go to c4, right? And then my king will actually go here. The pawns are blockaded. I will take all the pawns and I will promote my remaining pawn on c2. Are you with me? Am I making a mistake? Or do you agree with me? Maybe that's the most forcing winning plan. Let's put it on the board. Let's put it on the board, folks. Yes, yes, I was right. I was right. I'm so happy, folks. I'm so happy that I found this winning plan. Okay, let's beat Nakamura. Let's beat Hikaru in this position. Let's beat Hikaru in this position, folks. This will be a piece of cake right now, yeah? Just push the pawn. Oh, come on, Hikaru. Why don't you resign? I mean, what is this? What is this? Why am I suffering here? Are you playing for cheap stalemate tricks? I mean, what kind of chess is this? Yes, I respected you because of this beautiful defensive technique that you offered us, but what is this? I mean, are you playing for flagging me? Do you think that I will spoil this position? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's analyze briefly this endgame to see whether I spoiled it or whether I played perfectly, right? I will also try to show you the evaluation bar while also going through some moves, okay? So b3 was obviously correct. I mean, just look at the engine bar. White is winning plus 2.3. But again, you know, I've seen so many plus 2.3s spoiled in actual games. So it's also good to see all the way to the end how I converted this position. a4 was right. Knight f6. Yeah, tricky move. I was in between, you know, guys. Remember a5 and king f3? Apparently they're of equal value. That's interesting. King f3 and a5 of equal value. So I actually managed to find both of these candidate moves, they're strong candidate moves. Similar ideas, basically, more or less, yeah? I mean, king f3, again, it just gives moves like knight e4, for example. Or king g6. But king g6, I was happy because I'm pushing my pawn. And if you just take that pawn, I guess there's no way for you to stop it, yeah? Just a6. And that will cost you all your pawns. And you win like this. Okay? So instead of king f3, I go a5, the most direct idea. Knight e4 check. My line was this, by the way, knight g4. This is what I saw. Yeah, king e2 probably, or king f3. Doesn't really matter. Maybe king e2, right? And if you take that pawn, then I saw this, a6. And how do you stop that pawn, right? How do you stop that pawn? Because as far as I could see, this was my calculation. Something like this. Maybe bishop c5, maybe bishop b8. Yeah, bishop c5 makes sense. Maybe bishop b8 is also quite logical. And how can that knight, right, stop this pawn? I don't see it. I really don't see it. Right? So it will just cost them, we're just promoting to a new queen. So this was my calculation, folks. You see, when I went a5, I'm laying down my thoughts to you so you understand what's going on in my mind when I was making those decisions. So you can model me, like use me like a model to shape your endgame decisions. Knight e4, king g2, that's fine. King g6, a6, a6. Yeah, I mean, I'm still winning, by the way, but Hikaru is offering good resistance. White is still competitive winning. Bishop b8, again, there are different choices. Bishop b8 I thought was very, very clinical because I also want to take that pawn, right? Like, I actually don't want to lose my pawn. I want to take one more pawn, also defend my pawn on h6. So this was correct. Taking on a4 was correct. c5, and here Naka is doing some tricks to me because if I do king e3, right, then I will lose this pawn with check and so on. King g4 is fine, knight e6 is fine. And here I took my time, remember? I was not sure exactly how to win. I was feeling that I'm winning, obviously. But I just slowed down and I checked for the most forcing line first again. Right? The engine says maybe go bishop e3, maybe king g3, maybe, you know, like move the king up to the queen side like this. But I thought, you know, again, this is winning, but maybe there's more forcing finish from me. Even bishop d2, as I said, is an idea according to the engine, +5. But let's check my idea, right? Bishop b8. Oh my god, it's only plus 2.3 all of a sudden. This drops. But again, white is winning with best play. Hikaru took on h6. Apparently c4 was slightly better, although, I mean, it doesn't make any difference, right? Because I will push the pawn anyways. And this will cost you a knight. And important, I'm stopping these 2 pawns, right? So as long as you can see that, I will take all the pawns and my final pawn remains, then we are on the right track. So I'm happy that the line I chose, right, the most forcing move bishop b8 was also correct in this case. King h6, a7 was my idea, of course. And again, white is completely winning because there is no way for black to exchange the last pair of pawns. And this was very important to see from afar. And obviously the rest is easy, even for a mortal candidate master like me to convert. Folks, I hope this was an instructive session for you. I hope you learned something. The idea is multi-purpose. Again, in this series, we will talk about endgame principles. I will show you instructive positions, but also I will play against the bots and engines, and you will see how the conversion phase functions or how I fail in converting those advantages. So far, I'm mostly converting them. I'm 2 out of 2 in terms of conversion so far. I hope I will keep it up. If I fail, that's also interesting, right? You will see how a human is failing to convert those advantages, and we can scale it up. I can even play against a stronger version on chess.com and to keep it engaging and fun. And again, I'm waiting for your ideas, your feedback. Maybe you can send me some interesting playing positions, training positions that I can also try to convert against engines while always thinking out loud. In this channel, we want to make the learning process very efficient. This is why I formed this channel. I want to teach you everything I know about chess in the most efficient and instructive way. I'm here to improve your chess game, but of course, I'm also here to make it more engaging and fun with good presentations, interesting positions, and this is my goal for this channel. Hopefully you like it, and I will catch you on the next episode of this series. Bye bye.